a poetry night here at Takoma Park Community Center where we gather around the hearth of poetry. Really glad you could be with us on this chilly evening. We'll have two readers tonight, and afterwards we'll have an open reading, very short open reading. That's not something that we usually do, but we're going to do it tonight. We have two readers, and two readers only. Had unfortunately a last-minute cancellation, so this will be a little bit winging it tonight, and I'm excited that that gives us a chance actually to hear from some more of the folks who are in the room tonight. Our first reader is Beth Konkoski. We're very glad to have her with us. I'm excited to hear her read. I've never heard Beth read before. When I learned a few things about her, as we always do from the internet, and I learned that she writes flash fiction as well as poetry. And that's very interesting to me. The thing I noticed about the poem that is in your program is, wow, here's a sentence, a sentence, a sentence. It's like, wow, these are really beautiful sentences, and there's no doubt that they are also poems. I looked at a flash fiction piece and I said, wow, that's fiction. That's always a little bit of a mystery for me, right? What's a poem and what's prose? I think hearing Beth tonight will shed some beautiful light on the magic that is poetry. You will look forward to a real depth of feeling, some surprising juxtapositions, and beautiful economy, as you can see just from the sample in your program. Let's welcome Beth Konkoski.
Thank you. I'm very excited to say that my first time here, and I'm already sort of changing things around and making you do something new. Who knew that was going to happen? But I think that's exciting, and I hope that you will enjoy the other poems as much as I'm sure you will, enjoy the entire evening. So I thought I usually like to start a little bit, yes, I do write flash fiction, but I also like to start readings with a little bit of information about where I'm from. I grew up in the Adirondacks, or on the other side of the Adirondacks, in a place that my husband lovingly refers to as Top State, New York. It's the part that's basically Canada, and nobody really knows about it. And it's the part that is literally filled with more cows than people. And so there's oftentimes sort of a starkness to things that I write because there's just not a lot happening there. And it's also a place where you spend an awful lot of time outdoors, even though it is winter about 7.5 months of the year when you live there. So the first poems that I'm going to share with you all sort of have some nature language going on and imagery, and also we'll work our way from some winter stuff to spring. So I thought that would be appropriate because hopefully that's where we're going. So this one is called Watching Laziness. And it begins with a phrase from Pablo Neruda. Pablo Neruda says, "High up in the pines, laziness appears naked. So we go outside to gawk, our hair in oily strands needing a wash, and wonder how she climbed to where she sways in the wind. When did she undress, this arboreal debutante of sloth? Has she always been without covering, borne high in the trees to look down as we plod along and fail to hear the bristly symphony of pine needles? We would join her if we could manage the climb or hang on safely once we arrived. Instead, we sit, watching her freedom, humbled by the intensity that true laziness requires." And this is a piece called Stone Symphony, also a little bit about the outdoors. Who hears the humming of rocks at night? How even the tiniest pebble of tedious gray sandstone with no trace of quartz adds its rocky attitude to the symphony of stone. It is more than ever necessary to comprehend these moments, milk the crystal touch of time from every chance encounter. We hasten too quickly in neighborhood staccato and drag in silent tantrums behind us the benumbed stony faces of the children in our souls. So one of the things that I like is that my parents still live where I'm from. And so I have some poems that come from my adult time when I lived back home and also when I go to visit. And this one is actually about a time when I went swimming. And it takes place along the Racket River. And the Racket River is famous for having the most power dams, legend has it, of any river in the world. It has 27 power dams on this single river. And so this is called In the Dammed River. We swim naked in copper water, 3 witches, and the spell swirls to life with our conjuring arms. Not far off Rough Rock Trail and easy to catch should anyone try. But we risk it for the magic of the current on our skin. We bounce and sag and bulge, nothing like dryads or nymphs. But once immersed, our limbs shimmer in this wet mirror and trick time beneath the trees perfecting August. I spent quite a bit of time in my mid-20s driving from Albany, New York, which is on one side of the Adirondacks, to St. Lawrence County, New York, which is on the other side. And I would have to take this after a graduate class at about 10 o'clock at night. And so there is literally nothing out there. And you just drive. Sometimes I wouldn't see a car for hours. I might see a logging truck. And it was about a 3.5-hour drive, if I were being remotely safe. And so this is a poem that just sort of happened to me when I was standing outside at this rest stop. So it's called On a Road Outside Long Lake. Moon in a moldy sky, full but small across my windshield. I watch your lanterned promise all trip and must step outside the glass to hear how beautiful you make the night. I know the gray and shade of pine forest and the snake of Black Long Lake. Silver is my treasure when it rises to your light. I stand in night's personal silence, as I knew I would, and watch you, surprised as always by such a moment's gift. And then, let's see. This is a poem sort of for my grandfather, who grew up in St. Lawrence County and owned an antique store, and he refinished furniture. And so I spent a lot of time with him and a lot of time helping him load and unload the furniture that he was making. And so this is actually a poem for him after he died. It's called A Visit from My Grandfather. Nights when the wind is strong and memories steam like cocoa, my grandfather comes to tell my son he loves him. I have seen him, no more than a gust, dart behind the curtain when I come in to check. I pretend not to notice the smell of his pipe or the shade of plaid he leaves in the room. He must have something important to tell, something antique and great-grandfatherly, perhaps earned from the varnish and wood of his history, the many chairs and sideboards he brought back from their own dead places in the barns and attics of the North Country. So I tiptoe away, hoping my child will one day tell me the secrets he heard whispered through the bars of his crib. All right, and then now we'll do a couple of spring poems. This is a fairly new poem that I think that is just up on a website. I can't remember where it is right now, but anyway, it's called Spring Arrives. And this happened actually still in the North Country as I was driving to work. I taught high school there, as I do here, and I used to have a very long drive, and I would just see these sort of outrageous things, and when I'd get to school, I'd scribble them down in my journal, and many times they turned into poems. So this one is called Spring Arrives. My neighbor walks the road in a straw hat, tied on by a flowered scarf. A roulette gust of spring steals the hat, a game of twitching and glittering, some red heat in the day unplanned. But she gives chase. I know she is bald from a chiseled winter of cold chemical evenings. Each morning she says, all I want is a chance for soft, flowered beauty. So the wind carries her among the trees whose velvet leaves twist her a wig, and I clap, because it is spring. And then this is my last spring poem. This one is called Forecast, and we have many fake springs. You can call them thaws, perhaps. January thaw, there's a February thaw, there's a March thaw. And so each time you think, oh, it's got to be a little closer, and then you get snow again. But this one is called Forecast, and so it begins. Robins gather in dirty roadside snow, winter thin, begging worms from the first hint of mud. My son calls to them, bird, bird, a noise nearing happy after the silent nights of his fever and rattly lungs. For the first time in 2 weeks, we breathe outside air, hopeful even, though his cheeks still match the sallow collapsing banks sick with winter. The birds become a promise that lifts and lowers before us. I watch, trying to believe their chests can be a line of buoys, first harbor signal of the journey long towards spring. So next, I thought I would go to, my husband is here tonight, and we were married 26 years ago on Monday, and we've known each other since middle school, and so that's a very long time for both of us. And so I thought I would read first sort of a poem about, I guess, the persona that I put on as I contemplate what it means to be in a relationship for a long time and sort of in those ups and downs. And so this one is called Linger. And I won't say that it's actually for my husband. I think it's my marriage persona poem. You'll understand when you hear it. Linger. We could perch on the details of this near end. How I have worn you as my skin for decades. Let every sense curve toward a blossom or fruit of your choice. Burning any fringe or edge you don't like, I beg to fit in your chosen mold, to slide like a wedge of orange between your teeth. Steps without you are shards or ribbons, weeds, cardboard boxes thrown in my path, and I have forgotten the muscles used for lifting. And then another poem for my husband. This one is called Desire. In suckling dark, I find you. Mosquito current of desire buzzes all our skin. We are familiar, small in surprises. No babies cry, but we listen for one, inevitable. The planet cannot spin backwards. At dawn, we lie swaddled in sleep. I do not have to say, I love you. And then, like any good poet mom, I have a number of poems about my children. And I had a teacher once who told me that it was absolutely risky to write poems about your children because, for the most part, you are so in love with your children that you cannot write anything that anybody wants to hear. And so I kind of took that as a personal challenge and decided I would write poems that were not too effusive, I guess I would say. So I think the ones that I've chosen, I hope, fit that bill. So I think my teacher likes these, so she would probably be proud. My son falls asleep in my arms. I am home as a mother. Eyelid map of the body, study the passage of blood while you sleep. I travel here, fresh in the details of love. Lullabies whisper and bills must be paid. Rhubarb unfolds in the night. You say your first words, or sometimes silence, equal thoughts unexplained. And today, I see your eyebrows growing like new grass above your eyes. While the crickets in the field begin their chirp and the sun backs away to night, I watch carefully. Try not to think in fear. You snore, and I pray for your breath here against mine. And interestingly enough, that small child is now 18 and sitting in the office, or in the room as we speak. Let's see. So where is number 10? Where are you? Oh, there it is. Okay. So this one is now about my daughter, who is also here. And she was a gymnast for years, and this poem is in reference to that. It's called Balance Beam. How do her toes know to grip the beam? Her hands hold varnished wood, while I hold my breath. Wonder again about this body, floating once in the fluid of my body, and now able to kick itself upside down on 4 inches of wood. Her fingers tether her, suspended and holding down. Feet again planted, her very cells balance in this twist against physics and sense. Now she must tuck, knees to chest, leap and land again. No strings, no cord. My fear paws at the ground, ready to charge, but she stays upright, regains her feet, and glides to the dismount. I clap, call her name, cheer for this stranger, this daughter, so balanced and sure without me. And the last child poem that I will do, to be sure that my teacher did not think I was being too effusive about my children, I wrote this poem, and she has heard it before, and it definitely, sort of puts a new spin on how you're supposed to feel as a mom. My daughter sings. There is hardly a moment when she lets a tune sit in silence or allows her words to go unsung. She choruses and trills, croons and laments, hums, chants, and repeats each hour some new refrain until I cannot refrain from screaming. The notes stick in my brain, never her throat, until I sleep, then wake to the grueling sound she makes. But what kind of mother would hate the sound of her own child's voice? With my silence, I beg her to stop. Without rhythm or song of my own to answer, I plug my ears with wax like Ulysses' men and avoid the shipwreck of my anger, the capsizing flood of truth I might scream out. And it's only fair to say that she's going to the district choir tomorrow, so she actually can sing. She just did it a little too often. So she will be, tomorrow she will be there, and she does a very nice job. So I think that's only fair that I add that on. So I have a couple poems. I think, all poets, end up writing about art or writing at some point. I think that's just one of those things that we have to do. And I have lots and lots of those poems, and some of them I'm pretty unhappy with. Sometimes they're just journal prompts. But then sometimes they really do develop into something that I, enjoy or that I think is worth being a full poem. So this is one called Agitating Beauty. It's a little bit about, I think, my process of writing. Chinese painters say, in serenity, one can paint only fans, a waterfall or rising flower stirring the air near a fine lady's nose. I too paint fans when life is kind, shellac each moment with calm, and grimace when I make only flower-shaped words, an orchid rimmed in gold, blossoms of the plum arranged on a moonlit pool. Today, my empty stretch of silk awaits, some filament born of a piece I must shatter, if the real words can hope to spin. And I thought I would do the poem that's in your program. This was in Saranac Review this fall, and it's called Fragile Do Not Drop. And if you're interested in forms at all, I don't write in forms often. I use syllabics sometimes, but this is actually a form called a guzzle. I cheated a little bit at the end, but it's still pretty much a guzzle. And the rules of a guzzle are basically just that you use the same word for the last line of each set of 2 words, each couplet. And then you also are supposed to make each one sort of stand as its own image. So they're connected, but they do read almost like individual poems. And that's why it was interesting when in the introduction that she was talking about how each one is a sentence. And that's kind of part of the rule of a ghazal. So it's called Fragile, Do Not Drop. On a good day, I sense I'm breathing through glass, not shards cutting deep, just a dome of fine glass. I can almost press my hand to the edges, but then it falls, an insect captured beneath glass. As a child, I sat for hours in church, afraid that my sins would leak out, staining glass. For holidays we graced and passed neatly to the right, our manners stored deep in the crystals of glass. The storm freezes us hard in a place we call love until morning shines through the silver-frosted glass. Nobody told me how fragile boredom is. My porcelain smile now swept away glass. Neither empty nor full, no half-liquid to inspect, I am afraid of space outside the glass. Mirrors and their half-lives call out and move past. I tap down the walls, seek blank safety in glass. And so my final poem tonight is actually the title poem, or part of the title poem of my collection. The collection is called Noticing the Splash, and it was published in 2010. And it is a poem, if you've ever seen the painting of Bruegel, of Icarus, as he falls into the water. Everybody's seen that painting probably. And so the ship is moving away, and everybody's sort of turned away. And both the painting and then a poem that W.H. Auden wrote about it sort of suggests that nobody paid attention to Auden as he came flying out of the sky and landed. And so my poem is called Why I Disagree with Bruegel and W.H. Auden, which I suppose you're not supposed to do, but I did it. Again, we're having an open reading tonight, so I guess I do those things. As for suffering, the old masters and poets may need some revision, for they ignore those who wait, who sit and wonder about a journey's completion. The old masters and poets may need some revision. Where is the thought for Icarus's mother? Left to sit and wonder about a journey's completion, not made privy to her son's splash? Where is the thought for Icarus's mother? What would a mother say of waxed wings and the sun? No one suffers unregarded, she would say, even if she never knows of her son's splash. What would a mother say of waxed wings and the sun? Should anyone ever bother to ask, even if she never knows of her son's splash? We answer the terrifying phone in the empty pocket of night. Should anyone ever bother to ask, the ring sears nightmares, slaughters sleep, that terrifying phone we answer in the empty pocket of night, uncradling peace with the words we have longest feared. Such a ring searing nightmares, slaughtering sleep, ends hope and dreams and love. Uncradling peace with the words we have longest feared, we inhale grief as it becomes ours. Ignoring hope and dreams and love, you old masters must need some revision, must acknowledge the grief as it becomes ours, for somebody always notices the splash. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Beth. Revising the old masters. Boy, there's a life project. Thank you for that. And thank you for the beautiful Valentine's Day poems as well. We're very grateful. We have with us tonight also a returning reader. Stuart Hickman has read with us before. And it's a great pleasure to welcome him back tonight. In fact, he's had an impact on me. He read a poem when he was here before, a Zen master, a dialogue poem. And I tell you what, I've been trying to write one of those ever since. I'm very upset with him. Anyway, enough about me. But first, I should say my name. My name, Mary Beth Hayden. I have the great honor of being your host tonight on behalf of the Third Thursday Poetry Committee, which consists of Takoma Park's current Poet Laureate Merrill Leffler and our past Poet Laureates Ann Becker and Don Berger. And somehow I'm able to be part of this elite company as well, along with Carolyn Wilkins and Meredith Pond. Also, I should say, in the realm of thank yous, what a great thing, right? That Takoma Park has a poet laureate. I mean, wow, how many places have a poet laureate? Places the size of Takoma Park. I'm proud of us. And I'm proud of us for this Third Thursday Poetry Series, which has commenced in the very year this space opened. So we're one of the original tenants of the Takoma Park Community Center Auditorium, and we're also a TV program. You might notice that we have these great, wonderful hot lights, and that's for a purpose so that people at home in their Takoma Park living rooms could actually be watching us. And they also can go to as you can, go to the Takoma Park website, the City TV of Takoma Park, and you'll see that the archives of Takoma Park City TV programs have 7 tabs, and no kidding, one of them is poetry. One of 7 tabs. Wow. Imagine that. So you guys are in a very special place, and in fact, you make it special by being here tonight. Okay, back to Stuart. I am very excited to hear Stuart read tonight. One of the things that I appreciate his poem is the voice of the poems is just so at home in the world. At home in the world. The whole world with nothing left out and without leaning forward to the future or backward to the past. Thank you for that, Stuart, and I'm sure that you're going to live up to all of this praise. Please, if you would.
Wow, gosh. Thank you. That was really great. One of those phrases that use fresh in the details of love. It's lovely. It's a lovely phrase. So, so here we are. Thanks for coming out and having me back to read. So yeah, I'm going to travel a bit. I'm going to start with a poem that kind of takes place in Takoma Park, sort of on commuting. I'll just tell you basically what the settings are. I live out on the eastern shore of Maryland about half the time, and so the poem kind of starts in Takoma Park. The next one kind of goes out to the eastern shore. There's a meditation, one of those things that you might find annoying. And then it's interesting you said, because these are poems I've written recently. I've traveled quite a bit in the past few years. I seem to have written a series of poems about parks. And so there's 2 parks in Central Asia and one in Paris. And we'll pause briefly to talk about parrots. I don't have enough people in my poems is the problem. I mean, listening to yours, there's such vivid people up in trees, they're diving in the water. I got a few. We'll watch for them anyway. A cafe. We'll go back to the eastern shore and look just for a moment at Gaza and Haggadara. Gaza, of course, is very densely populated. The eastern shore where I live is very sparsely populated. and Hagadera is I think the largest refugee camp in the world in Kenya. And then the last poem I'll read will be sort of that fittingly kind of the last journey that many of us take, our final journey, and where we ask the ultimate question. This final journey is the shuttle bus from the BWI airport to the garage, and the question is, where did I park my car? And so that's kind of where we'll end up. Anyway. So the first one's called Commute. The day is damp with dewy beams, the streets unfull of song. The whisper air has hints of grass, the sidewalks flow along. Each yard encased by frilly plank, each home its walk foretells. I'd pawn it all and cross the piers to the place they forge the bells. The train encases all its charge in walls of glass and chrome. Each foot is shod, each stop is rung, then silence, thick as foam. They toddle thus and nod and read what's new, what trends, what sells. I ride with them, but stake the path to the place they forge the bells. You can watch all this in slow-mo later on when it's on, kind of. So the second one is who would listen to the owl? Who would listen to the owl? Nothing helps but listening. The sound loops the room from a domain other than us, book and lamp. To step outside the only else beside that lonely O is the damp, icy nightness. Pine shapes hold the dark. Rains tack in the grasses, in the air amidst them. A silence seems settled forever. Then comes that deep round bird, hollowing the dark in shape of one whose warmth forebodes. Who only know only lone. Who only know only lone. Meditation on impermanence. The car I drive and enjoy, it's gone. As is the one I envy even more. Gone. The work I don't ever want to do again. Gone. So is the fear of having that work yet to do. The dream of my highest self, gone. As are the limitations to living that dream, gone. The goal is gone, the willingness to go on, gone. The sadness is gone, as is the saying goodbye. The money, gone. The fear of losing it all, gone. The power to enlighten is gone, so are fading, sleeping, dreaming, the moment of waking and the end of that moment are gone. And that which removes everything, the magician's final sleight of hand, is gone. There's no people in this yet. Okay, here's some. There are two poems called Two Parks in Central Asia. The first one's called At the End of the World. Your step is slow in Panfilov Park, the path uneven concrete paths, the fountains capped for winter long, though now the grass brightens, the piles of leaves are put in bags. There is a cluster of them under the spruce, and lengths of roses wait, groups of thorny sticks ringed by busts of dirt. On each bench is perched a couple. This one sits. Her head is on his lap. No one is alone this spring day. Dad holds a sleeping child. Mom walks with daughter whose black hair is half her length. A man reads, standing, the pram he is pushing so gently to and fro. She sleeps, he reads. He looks at her, then he reads again. Traffic races on all sides of Panfilov Park, surrounding these trees, these roses, these parents, these lovers, all dappled in the tiniest of bird songs, as though we could all be here a long time. As the second poem in this set is called Golden Man. Golden Man. He stands effortless on the back of a winged lion. Neither is moving. Even in our dreams, nothing moves. He's like a figure on a coin. Who would not love the Golden Man, standing atop a column, atop a hill, atop a town? An archer with bow to his side as in peace. Arrow shafts peek up from behind his shoulder, standing perfectly fine. No one takes issue with the Golden Man. Build a park around the Golden Man with 8 bronze panels standing for the coherence of our history. The armies clash in the foreground. The prisoners are taken away somewhere toward the back, near the sky. Do what you do with Golden Man things. Write songs, engrave his image on our children's schools' walls. Paint his image on our money. We need him only to seek what he sought from on high. We need him just there where we don't embrace him, up high where we squint to see him. A gold plate on his chest, the gold plate that's there on the Scythians, the Moguls, the businessmen. If we find miracles and mysteries, we give some to him, a poem in our bones about this land, erected, wrecked, and resurrected, our conflicted hopes, the complexity of these streets, our silence and wind on the back of the winged lion. Time comes one could do worse than to be buried as Golden Man, with 10,000 ornaments and a plate inscribed with letters we have yet to understand. These are all recent poems. I decided to put this one in. I have these dear friends of mine, old dear friends, dear old friends. My tenured friends are in the audience, and so I pulled this one, and this is from 1993, so over 20 years ago, where we were both together in India, and it's about seeing a tree full of parrots, called A Moment of Parrots. You could not have foreseen it, only that green was not in it, except tree green, and that you turned to the sound of the tree and grew warmer as the tree grew louder in your eye. But you can't remember what was after, but that the gawky shadows flew and the air drew closed. Traffic insinuated, the sun was rose. Here's another park. I don't know what my obsession is with parks. This is Jardin des Plantes. This is in Paris. And some people are in this one as well. The children pose, the boats run, the trees stand, clipped as columns. Statuary stands statuesque. Couples promenade the promenade. Whose ever step is that same gravelly crush that signs us all? The mower mows round the filial gardens. The greens now pose, pond-like, in the garden rings surrounding. The sound dies against the rustic wind, which shades the peonies in their pots. That these architects, year after year, have gotten this far. The trees still ride their slow ride to the sun. Long ago I stopped asking, how did things get like this? Questions feel like topsy. Fringe, trimmed to the aesthetic, untangly questions. It is what it is. trees cropped as though we had browsed them ourselves, trimmed to a human scale. The children with long sticks, their boats touch and turn, which now sail, meeting the air anew, cast off the concrete shore, and head shoreward, the world being so round and small, we barely launch, but land. This is at the Demi Luna Cafe. This is for a colleague of mine named Anna. When I read this to my wife, she said, "That sounds like a love poem." And I said, "Well, that's not. No, there's nothing going on. This is." And I was just having dinner, and so I told Anna that my wife was concerned about it. She said, "Oh, please tell her not to worry. You know." She was Spanish, and she had this boyfriend from Sicily. So she said, don't worry, just tell her that nothing will happen, because if it does, my boyfriend will kill us both." So, so with that. So anyway, this is about a conversation that we had at the Demi Luna Cafe. We talked about the languor of this stasis, the cafes serving coffee, the fountains constant founting, the sunset light holding the church spire at the lane end. Head tipped up from your salad, did you watch with the eyes of oblivion cloud clips sliding the space between roof edge and roof edge? Could we live in their zoomed out frame, view our old city lane from their purple view, the water purling up from beneath our ken, the sun beyond the city? We are suns beyond the cities we dream and the structures we find. We look across at open eyes, see nothing has changed except the definition of the moment, an abstraction returning to what is obvious. The pairs of lovers caught in this cobbled flow, as slow as cloud and as lithe, the unblinking gaze of the dog passing by, the flavor of a cold wine, the final lay of the light. Though mostly asleep, we can wake to the full shining of ourselves in a world sadly sweet, which whispers in its darkening, anything, anything. Okay, two more. This one is the one that kind of starts in near where I live out on the Eastern Shore, and then kind of glances in the direction of these other places. It's called the voiceless. On the square mile south of Deep Neck Farm reside a dozen of us. A mile square in Gaza holds 1,000 times 13 souls. In Hagadera, 1,000 times 30. Our half moon hangs above the steely bay, the katydids choir the setting sun, and dark the pillowing clouds the far lands hold. The table here, its woody scent retains. A candle casts an inconsistent gold. What path or pattern fortune formed to make this landfall here? What history, politics, power, war, or weather converged to make this shoreline incomprehensibly spare and calm, while the blunt press of hate, the ruin of sword, fills the baskets of immiseration? Who of us will humanize the enemy and not be heard as quaint, naive, alone? The katydids close in, and with relentless volume, rhythm, edge, and message sound, and will do so for hours, nights, forever, What can this species do with similar relentlessness to collect our voice this time? Okay, so last one, called Gailey Garage. It's not even written as a poem. See, it's like, where are the short lines? You know, it's like a block. So it's one of those things that kind of starts as a journal, and I don't think I really have developed it very much beyond, obviously I haven't formatted it like it should look, but anyway, here it is. You'd think we were the last people on this last bus ride. And you, sitting in the back, all you can really see are the backs of their heads, mostly. Except for the kids. You know how they move their heads around the place. The blonde girl, see, the one with the hawk lip, she looks around, straight back at the large woman, whose girth takes up 2 seats. She looks at her, and you can see how we all start out like a thin, blonde, hawk-lipped girl and grow up to take 2 seats. When does that happen? We can ask that question and think about it now, but not for long, you're thinking, because this is the last bus, the one we're taking. Not a Greyhound across country. This one's a shuttle bus to the parking garage. It will feel like an eternity. And you think and ask this, can you imagine if we all looked at each other? Can you imagine or coming that or talked like we were all coming from the same big party on a shuttle? Can you imagine loving even some of these people? That would be your last task on the last trip. Just get to know them enough to love some of them. Then you won't tire of it, and it won't feel like an eternity. Get to know them and their stories, as many as you have time to hear, and you'll tell yours, and it'll go like that. Their stories will surprise you. How similar. We're all talking about where we parked our cars, for instance. How can the human story be all about this simple next step? I know where I want to park, you'll say. I have seen so many in the past few years, all gone to their parking spaces. I've had to think about what they must have thought about, how they lived, about how they parked. Everyone's thinking about their cars except the girl and her sister. They know their blue suitcases will go on to other trips. Godspeed, girls, you say. You'd think this was our last ride. How can I love these 18 people, or even, as I said, some of these people? You'll figure it out. Turns out you have a long ride, and they don't change much, really. They mostly look forward. The man poised at the door, he thinks it's an eternity. But I did see him catch his eye when he was watching me watch the girl, watch the large woman. He saw that, and then our heads all turned back to regular. And then some of us went back to thinking about how soon we'd be driving away. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for asking us lots of questions. Big questions, little questions, medium-sized questions. Lots to think about. Want to tell you a little bit about next month and the month after. Hope we'll be able to see you on March 17th, where we'll hear from E. Laura Goldberg, Rebecca Remington, and Fred Zerm. April 21st, Poetry Month, Hiram LaRue, Shenandoah Sawash, and Lauren Summers. And Matthew Westbrook. A special treat tonight, we're going to hear from some of the poets in the audience. First among them would be Sally Toner, to be followed by Michelle Evans, Yvonne Amato. If you'd get up here and say your name before you read your poem, that would be really wonderful. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sally Toner, and thanks, Beth, for making this happen, and thank you to Stuart for the reading. And I'm kind of going with this winter theme, and realizing as I'm listening to all of these locales that I think I was 19 years old before I was ever physically north of where we're standing right now. I did traveled a bit since then, but one thing I was saying to Beth the other day, I just got back last week from a college visit, and I said, it was in Michigan, and I said there are different kinds of cold. I grew up knowing there were different kinds of heat, but didn't realize there were different kinds of cold. And she said, "Oh yeah," and so I thought about that, and a line got stuck in my head, and I've been told that when a line gets stuck in your head, it often becomes a villanelle, which is a type of poem where lines repeat. So this is called How the World Might End. There are different kinds of cold. It never occurred to me here, in my state, where seasons tease. Feet of snow melted in a day, in childhood's circus storm. The elephants played in different kinds of cold. Everyone trapped, then the ringleader's cue. Poof! Water came from ice, swollen streams, flooding the streets in my state, where seasons teased. But now the ice packs hard, unforgiving, raising earth, hiding treasures, frisbees, tennis balls, bicycle tires, in a different kind of cold. We landed in Detroit, where they burn houses to stay warm. My daughter didn't believe, coming like me from a state where seasons tease. Until we drove to Studio A and past those rusted, rotting shells, we stopped, parked right outside in Hitsville, USA. They sat in vinyl chairs in the different cold, stuffing history into record sleeves. A later season's tease. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for opening up the mic to us. Thank you to Beth and Stuart for your wonderful words. My name is Michelle Evans, and I'm a colleague of Beth's and Sally's. We teach English together, and I have been inspired by them. I don't know how they find the time to be wives and mothers and writers and teachers of writing, and I have slowly started to write myself. I've found some time to carve out of our busy schedules to write, and so I'm thankful for them, and I'm grateful for this opportunity because I don't do this often. The poem that I'm going to share tonight is called Swan Song, and I wrote it for two young men who are very important to me, my sons. So this is for Kennedy and for Harrison. Each time he walks out my front door, wearing a bullseye on his hoodied back, I wonder, is this the last time? I wish I could download a different track for him. But in this country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, you hear about boys that look like him. Boys that wear the same bullseye. Boys that walk out front doors, wave goodbye to their mothers, and never come back. Boys whose last breaths, moments, phrases become lyrics of a remixed swan song. A song played on heavy rotation. A song looped across our divided nation. A song with a tune as old as itself. A broken record of sorts. A national anthem with refrains from boys like Trayvon, who asked, "What are you following me for?" and boys like Michael, who insisted, "I don't have a gun, stop shooting," and boys like Freddie, who gasped, "I can't breathe, I need a pump." And each time another black boy walks out his mother's front door, for the last time, these verses strike a chord in some of us. But shouldn't it matter how these lives end to all of us? Can't we lift every voice and together write a new song? He still walks out my front door, still wearing his birthmark of a bullseye. And each time I pray that it is not his last. Thank you.
Just also want to start with a round of thank yous to Takoma Park for having a poet laureate, for having the series, to the organizer, to the featured poets, and also to the two poets that just preceded me with terrific works. Set up for this one, I think I'll read two because one of them is very short. Who heard about the first ever detection of gravitational waves? About a week ago. Very exciting to me. I write a lot about science and technology, and this was just an absolutely kind of awesome display of human ingenuity, the ability to design and build a detector with a great name, multisyllabic. It's called the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. And what this observatory was able to do was actually detect ripples in space-time, little gravitational waves that began 1 billion years ago in a rather dramatic event where two black holes, which are some of the most WTF conjurings of Einstein, forgive me, and they were in a little chase like this, and they coalesced, and they created a signal that LIGO, it's that short name for that multisyllabic detector I just mentioned, was able to detect. And that was quite inspirational to me. And this poem is called Three Suns, or an ode to LIGO, the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. That's the last time I'm going to say that. At the time of the merger, more than 1 billion years ago, you and I were hardly even latent glimmers in the quivering protoplasm of one-celled wonders that then were the pinnacles of this planet's biological arts. At that same time, in a faraway place, 1 billion light years far away, twin black holes, 60 suns worth of mass, in abysmal packages each, but a half-hour's drive across, had enough of their quickening, whirling chase, and collapsed into a soap bubble embrace, melding into a oneness with a softening string of pulsations like a pinged bell ringing down. With no intention, no foreknowledge, the whole dang drama was broadcast in a lighthouse pattern of gravitational spew. 3 suns worth of energetic pulsations transmitted on an all-cosmos channel at a fast-as-light pace with billion-year patience happened onto a spiral backwater of a recently named galaxy at a moment when those single-cell progenitors had just managed to evolve to be clever and reverent enough to build physics-informed divining rods devised to shiver in the gravitational whispers from faraway mergers of black hole twins, revealing so demurely that the universe always has been rife with the propensity and patience to astonish itself. So that's a recent poem, and it reminded me of an older one, a very short one that has some relation, perhaps. It's called Light Years. Go anywhere else in the universe, and our over-the-top sun, here so crass and garish, will be preposterously far away there. Those damned light years lick its light dark. It always does, space. And with the vanishing light goes any marker of any other sun's life, stranding thousands of local intelligences with only themselves to love and hate, with no way ever to share each other's awkward styles of awe. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Richard Lohr, and I want to say also that I appreciated all the readings we have had so far, and I hope you like this. I'm sort of divided even now which poem to read you. I'm getting two published in the Sligo Journal, a local poetry magazine associated with Montgomery College, and I just happen to have them on my iPhone. So with a little bit of squinting and so on, I'll just read this one. It's called Generations Ago. Long ago, loose in a field like untethered dogs, they long ago paused in a sea of sweet-smelling mud, like long ago butterfat flooding under their toes. Not far from the high hemlocks, rooted like taciturn priests, long ago their own prophet and personal prayers. Long guarding their own prophet and personal prayers. Long ago they dreamt of mothers dressed in warm flannels, holding their children like treasured dolls, instead of martinis and bourbons and dry red wine. Long ago, in the slurry, naked and pale, in the bright long ago sun, itching and burning, they rolled over the hardest of stones into the unstoppable flow of their lives. Long ago, too, they started to dream of blistered black feet, long ago children standing in seas of foul-smelling dirt, photos of black men, rope hung or tarred, napalm flames, orange plumes eating the skin. Long ago had sex in the dark and then in the day, took their long ago drugs, flew out of windows crashing their bones. Long ago chanted, "Hell no, we won't." Long ago, long stood their ground, or fled the country away, rode buses of change long ago south, marched their marches and were blown up into leaders, the hopeful, the dead. Sometimes caught, empowered or jailed, sometimes put into comas by proud medical men. And almost as long ago, so quick was the change, went back to school, took jobs of authority, children and wives, and long ago worked at hoeing and plowing their own chosen fields, until aged like herbs on the sill and dried by the sun, started to dream of being wild children again, of playing like dogs in the sweet pudding mud, while much of the world was long ago baked by the hottest of suns into Syrian rubble and blood.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, everyone. What a fabulous feast we've had tonight. All different kinds of poetry. I want to close out the night with a couple of words from my very self. I can't resist. I was told to come here, gosh, Mary Beth, bring some poems. I'm thinking, wow, we're down to 2 poets. What if nobody comes? So I came with some things to share, too, in the just in case vein. And but I'm going to cut it down to 2 little minutes here. And this poem, I feel like I need to throw something out into this horrible political environment. Yuck, yuck, yuck. All right, so this is called Truth versus Fact. I'm not against facts, but I'm really for truth. I think you'll be, aren't we as poets? I mean, gosh darn it. All right, truth versus fact. Truth, a mighty concordance, fact, no more than a word. Truth, a product of the brush in the hand of the master. Fact, one stroke, as small as just one horsehair dipped in paint. Fact alone, one lonely atom. Truth, the heart that beats. Anyway, there's my political poem. And now a little love song to poetry, which you won't get that it's a love song to poetry, but if you stay with me just for 1 minute, you will. It's called Hats. A Stetson, a bowler, the floppy hat that weeds the garden. Consider the role of hats. At St. Patrick's, it was a rule for the fair sex. I mean, you'd put one on, take your place in the just right pew. Now your head is both humble and crowned. You would know for sure that what will happen next is something special. A regal top hat, the beret that was your dad's. I like poems with hats on top. The ones that say, here I am, what do you think so far? I just don't understand poems naked, as it were, naked on top, as if to say, don't wait to be invited. There is no pew for you. So that's dedicated to all the poets who gave us such wonderful titles here tonight. Thank you so much. Really grateful that you were able to be with us. Be sure to grab a program. You'll learn about future events at Takoma Park and also our survey to make sure that the programming we're doing is the programming you want. Thank you so much.